Hey YouTube, this is the Robinhood investor. Hope you had a great week of trading. As always, I really appreciate your support. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about investing, subscribe to this channel. Today I'm going to review the overall market this past week, which includes the US and international markets, different sectors, market movers, and earnings. The market wasn't too bad this past week, but wasn't great either. Let's take a look at the volatility index, or the VIX, also known as the fear index. As volatility increases, there's more market movement. And as you can see in the past couple months, pretty much from July to early October, it was fairly stable. And in mid-October, it spiked up. And then it went back down a bit, and it's hovering around 18.4. Let's go back to Robinhood. Take a look at the major indices, starting with the S&P 500. So let's take a look at the SPY ETF. Past week, up 0.25%, and at one point was up 1.95%. Next is Dow Jones Industrial Average, was up 0.53% this past week, and at one point was up 1.96%. Next are Qs, which tracks the NASDAQ 100, which are primarily technology companies, was down 0.64%, and at one point was up 2.2%. Now let's look at the international markets, starting with the developed markets. This was up 0.15%, and at one point was up almost 2%. Last but not least is the emerging markets, which is down 0.79%, and at one point was up 2.27%. Now let's take a look at the sectors. So utilities, conglomerates, and consumer goods performed the best this past week. And I think it's because a lot of retail and institutional investors are converting from growth to value stocks, and consumer goods and utilities are great value stocks. And the worst performing ones are technology, basic materials, and industrial goods this past week, about 1.1 to 1.4%. Typically, utilities and consumer staples are less volatile but have less upside, versus technology and industrials are more cyclical and volatile and have more opportunities for growth. And if your stocks dipped this past week, don't panic sell. Continue to hold and buy during these dips, and dollar cost average to your portfolio. When there's volatility, there's opportunity. Let's go back to Robinhood. Now let's look at the market movers. Starting with Iridium. Past week, All right, this one's down. All right, so past week, Atlassian was down 13.16%. Next is Textron. I think the reason why the other ticker I was looking at, Iridium, it's It's technically down on Finviz, but I think Robinhood sometimes it's inaccurate in terms of the charts. But looking back at Textron, down 14.02% this past week. VF Corp, which is a apparel company, past week down 11%. Next is Activision Blizzard. Apparently the recent game they released didn't meet analyst expectations in terms of sales. So it dipped 7.71% this past week. Next is AMD. Down 10.05%. Next is eBay. Down 9.48%. Next is IQ. Past week, down 8.27%. Next is IBM. Down 8.11%. Next is Caterpillar. Down 7.48%. Next is NVIDIA. Past week, down 6.97%. Next is Home Depot. Past week, down 6.5%. Next is Shopify. Past week, down 5.82%. Last but not least, JD. Past week, down 4.85%. So those were the losers I was following this past week. Let's look at the gainers now, starting with Procter & Gamble. So past week, up 10.48%. As you can see, it spiked. Next is United Airlines. Up 8.48%. Next is Philip Morris. Past week, up 7.85%. Next is PayPal. Past week, up 7.96%. Nokia. Past week, up 6.44%. Next is Morgan Stanley. Past week, up 6.42%. Next is Kraft Foods. Past week, up 6.49%. Next is Goldman Sachs. Past week, up 5.72%. Next is American Tower, REIT. Past week, up 5.87%. Next is Disney. Past week, up 6.27%. Next is Walgreens. Up 5.83% this past week. Last but not least is Pepsi. Past week, up 4.6%. So let's look at the earnings now this past week, starting with Johnson & Johnson. Expected EPS was $2.05 versus $2.03. This past week it did well. Next is Bank of America. Expected EPS was 66 cents versus, or no, actual was 66 cents versus expected EPS of 63 cents. Past week was down. Next is United Health. Past week was up 1.9%. Actual EPS was $3.41 versus expected $3.29. Next is Procter & Gamble this past week. Actual EPS was $1.12 versus expected $1.10, so it beat earnings. It also spiked. Next is TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Actual EPS was 56 cents versus expected 56 cents. Next is Netflix. Actual was 89 cents versus expected of 68 cents. Next is Philip Morris. Actual was $1.44 versus expected $1.27. Next is SAP. I guess Robinhood didn't show it. Next is IBM. Actual EPS was $3.42 versus expected $3.39. Next is Honeywell. Actual EPS was $2.03 versus expected $1.99. Next is PayPal. Actual EPS was 58 cents versus expected 54 cents. Next is an American Express. Actual EPS was $1.88 versus expected $1.76. Next is Goldman Sachs. Actual EPS was $6.28 versus expected $5.38. Last but not least, Morgan Stanley. Actual EPS of $1.17 versus expected $1.02. So overall this past week in terms of earnings, it's been a strong earnings season so far. And next week there's actually a lot of companies reporting earnings next week. So let's go through that list. Next week we have Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Visa, AT&T, Verizon, Boeing, Intel, Merck & Co., Comcast, McDonald's, Altria Group, 3M Company, United Pacific, General Electric, United Technologies. We have UPS, Texas Instruments, Gilead, Lockheed Martin, Bristol Myers, ConocoPhillips, NextEra Energy, Caterpillar, Charter Communications, Biogen, and Baidu. That's all for this video. How is your portfolio doing this past week? Comment down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about investing, subscribe to this channel. See you in the next video.